Porn, right? We'll go ahead and get that out of the way. Lots of people are uncomfortable talking about porn. I'm not. It's the nature of my job. So we're going to talk today about how porn culture shapes our sexual health and the reasons why I feel like it shapes our sexual health. I want to start with a story about one of my friends named Jennifer. We met in college, and she was very bubbly and bright and full of life. Once I went into the sexual health topic area in my studies, all of a sudden everybody looked at me to be sort of the expert, if you will. And so she was talking to me about her vulva and about the way that she felt like it didn't look the way it was supposed to. Her labia didn't look right. So what had happened was that Jennifer had watched pornography. She had watched it several times since she was younger, she had disclosed, and I tried to explain to her that there's a variety when it comes to vulvas. And Jennifer and I are actually still in touch now, and she knows that I'm having this conversation with you all, so don't worry about that. My feeling about pornography is neither positive or negative. There's not that spin on it. It's that it has the capacity to affect sexual health in a negative way. So all of our sexual health, including our children's sexual health. We're going to start off with some data because any good conversation starts with data, right? So the average first exposure to internet pornography is 11 years old. So that is not just I intentionally went and looked for porn, but sometimes it just comes up on our computer when we don't mean for it to. It used to happen a lot more than it does now, but it's happened. So 11 years old. So when you think about talking to an 11-year-old about pornography, most of you are probably like, that seems a little young to be having a conversation about porn. Well, yeah, it might be, but they're gonna see it, so we should be talking about it. 93% of boys and 62% of girls are exposed to pornography by the time they're 18. So 93% of boys before they turn 18 years old. These are just little fun facts, if you will. The average age that a woman gets involved in pornography is 22 years old. And guess which country produces the most female porn stars? Yeah, by a lot, by like a big margin. So we have a lot of porn stars. So 40% of US high school students had reported having sexual intercourse in high school. So this was actually in the last 30 days when they had asked them if they had engaged in sexual intercourse. And then 10% reported having 4 or more sexual partners in high school. Okay, so young people are the highest rate of sexually transmitted infections. So that is starting at 15 in high school, moving up to 24, and that age range accounts for high school and college students, which I've done a lot of work with both. And chlamydia happens a lot around, not just on our campus, but on all campuses. When I went to college, I remember someone saying, I was going to East Carolina University, and they said, oh my gosh, Leslie, like you need to be careful because everybody there, they all have sexually transmitted infections, like everybody has herpes. Well, yeah, but everybody does on all the campuses. Whatever the national average is at the time for a sexually transmitted infection, it's 10 times more than that on any college campus. So these conversations are important to have before we get to college, but a lot of times they're not happening. So in the past 30 days, over half of UNC Charlotte students who were surveyed using the National College Health Assessment reported that they had engaged in penile vaginal intercourse. So over half of our student population. 37% of those reported having used a condom, only 37%. Now, I work on UNC Charlotte's campus. I've been here teaching sexual health since 2007. I've been working in higher education for almost 15 years, teaching sexual health in some capacity. 2 years ago, we implemented what's called the Safer Sex Station inside the Student Health Center, and it provides free barrier methods of contraception to all students as long as they're a student at UNC Charlotte. And it's not just condoms, there's dental dams, there's female condoms, there's finger cots. There's all these things for all of the different things that they could be doing so they can do it in a safer way, yet still only 37% reported using a barrier method of contraception. And barrier methods are the best method that we have to prevent sexually transmitted infections. The Healthy Youth Act, this is in regards to the education that is happening and or not happening inside the public school system that gets students to college with a lack of education or puts them in a position where they might use pornography as their education. So the Healthy Youth Act in 2009, it was actually first implemented in 2010 to 2011, but basically it tried to look at parent perspective more, as well as actually having data-driven types of activities and education that goes on in the classroom. I work with the North Carolina School Health Training Center, and I actually travel all over North Carolina training health educators how to successfully teach reproductive health in their classrooms. The main reason, when they've done research, and they have, why teachers do not teach comprehensive sex education in their classrooms is because they feel uncomfortable with the topic. Not because they don't think it's important, but because they feel too uncomfortable to talk about it in front of their students. So my job is to make them feel more comfortable. Now, obviously, 8 hours is not enough time for me to make somebody feel comfortable with sexual health content. Not a lot of people would get up on stage and say, porn, 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 like we're gonna talk about porn. But, you know, you don't have to be that comfortable to be able to talk about anatomy and physiology and function and protection and things like that. Porn sex versus real sex. So don't do this now because I want all of you to stay with me. But there is a little video on YouTube and it is data driven. They did some research. This was over in Europe. This has been several years ago. If you put in YouTube porn sex versus real sex using food, because there are these food items that do the activities, so you don't actually see the penis and the vulva and all that. It's actual food items that are acting out these sex acts. And it talks about all of the ways that porn sex and real sex are different. And it's a really important conversation that I have in a lot of my classrooms because the way that porn has the capacity to have a negative effect on sexual health is because porn is fantasy. It's not real life. It's not what typical sex acts looked like. It's not what, if you go into the bedroom expecting your partner to perform like a porn star, in most cases, you are going to be let down. So, as a result, here are some things that I believe to be true about how pornography can affect sex lives. So, people are just overall unsatisfied. They're like, hey, my sex life doesn't look like it does in pornography, so my partner must not be very good at it. They're just not excited about it. Unrealistic expectations, and so this is not just about performance, but people's own unrealistic expectations of their own bodies. So my penis isn't big enough. I don't last long enough. I don't, your body doesn't perform in certain ways that you feel like that it should. But what people don't understand is that pornography is, in fact, fantasy. It is a production. The person for that porn was selected because of the size of their penis. That's a fact. This person was selected because they were willing to have plastic surgery and tattooed coloring done on their labia to make them look whatever normal is. There's plastic surgery that happens in those jobs just like there is in other parts of Hollywood and things like that where you see all the outward plastic surgery. The same thing's happening in the porn world. So when you hold your body and your partner's body to those expectations, I believe that you don't value your body as much because you believe it doesn't do what it should or what it could, or you always want it to be more and it's just not going to be. STIs are spread at an alarming rate. There was actually several, probably 10 years back, they started implementing condom use in most pornography. So if you watch pornography now, oftentimes you will see them using condoms or barrier devices, but this is not true for all pornography. So a lot of times in the porns that people are watching, depending on when they were produced, they may see people having sex without using barrier methods of protection. So I'm in one ear saying, hey, you guys need to use condoms every time you have any type of intercourse. And then you've got the porn over here that they watch all the time and nobody's using any barrier methods of protection. So it's two different messages. And although most reputable porn places have certain standards in terms of STI testing, sexually transmitted infection testing, people don't often. They don't know when they need to get tested for sexually transmitted infections. I try to talk about that a lot in classes, but when you watch pornography, nobody's on there saying, hey, after this, both of these people were tested for chlamydia and gonorrhea. So it's like you don't know if they're actually doing it, and so you're just going to assume that they're probably not doing it. What can be done about this? Well, I would encourage, so I was having a conversation with someone the other day about having the conversation about this actual conversation, this me on the stage, and how the first time kids typically see pornography, the average age is 11. And the person I was talking to said, 11 years old to talk about porn? That seems a little young. Maybe. But have you been having regular conversations with your child since they were very small? And I don't mean conversations necessarily always about sex. Sex does not always have to be the topic. But if you haven't had a really great conversation and a great relationship of communication with your child from a very young age, then when they get to be 11 and you try to have the talk, the birds and the bees talk, which that shouldn't be a thing. When you try to have that one talk, it's going to be a complete disaster. That should never be a talk, not the birds and the bees talk. It should be a progressive thing that happens over time. So when a child is young, when they are 1 and 2, you're talking about body parts and functions and talking to them about the way that their body is going to function. If you have a little girl that she's going to have vaginal discharge, they don't know that that's a normal thing because nobody really talks about bodies in that way. When the 4th grade, they showed the miracle of life. Did y'all see that? I saw that. It's like the sperm and the egg meet and the baby and all that. But nobody tells you how your body's supposed to function. So having those conversations, everybody knows their own kid. If your child, like where they're at in the process, if they're ready, if they're not ready, but starting really young with that conversation and building on that. So when it's time to have a conversation about pornography, you're not going to be shut down because they're used to talking to you about sensitive topics. They're used to talking to you about everything. So it's not going to blindside them when you're like, hey, you might see a video and it might have 2 people and they might be naked. And there might be a penis, and you can have that conversation and they're not just going to totally blank out on you. It starts in the home. Even though I travel around the state and teach teachers how to cover this content, my biggest wish is that wouldn't even be necessary. I wish it happened in the home. I wish people were communicating their own values to their kids, but they're not. So what happened to Jennifer? Jennifer is alive and well. Jennifer has a husband and 2.3 kids and the white picket fence and all that jazz. I've talked to Jennifer since she talked to me about her vulva, and I told her that it really had an impact on me and the way that I thought about pornography and the way that I think a lot of women think about their bodies, the way that a lot of men think about their bodies, and it really makes me reflect on how porn can have an implication on all of that.